Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, worshippers of all ages, welcome back to YouTube. My name is SeaRaptor, and today we're bringing you a first look at Tier VIII Premium American Heavy Cruiser, USS Anchorage. Anchorage has recently been added into the client for super testing purposes, which means, as it does these days, that I'm allowed to show you the ship in port. We can look around at the stats, we can poke under the hood, but I cannot, of course, play the ship on stream or on videos for you guys. All of that will have to come much later as she is closer to release. But it does mean that we can do a little theory crafting and look at the ship and try to figure out what's going on here. What does she do well? What does she not do well? And we'll just have a look. So let's get to it. First things first, as we always do, start talking about her hit points. 41,800 hit points. It's pretty solid for a Tier 8 heavy cruiser. It's a little less than her tech tree cousin, USS Baltimore, and it's behind some of the other Tier 8 heavy cruisers, like, the various hipper variants. But it's not bad. Like, it's 42,000 HP. It's fine. It's pretty typical what you'd expect to find for a Tier 8 heavy cruiser. So that's nice. 16% torpedo protection is actually pretty good for the tier. Not best in tier, not worst in tier. It's nice. This is nice to have, not need to have. It is noteworthy that this is significantly better than the torpedo protection on both Baltimore and on Buffalo. One of the things you're gonna see as we get deeper into this kind of poke around, Anchorage is Buffalo, right? If you own a Tier 9 American cruiser Buffalo out of the tech tree, you know what it's like to play in Anchorage, right? And we're going to talk about this repeatedly. The difference here is that there's some changes to her armor scheme and so on and so forth, and one of those is Anchorage has better torpedo protection, okay? Speaking of armor scheme, let's have a look. So, again, this ship is a Buffalo, so the armor scheme is nearly identical. The main change is really amidships, I should turn all this stuff back off, along her belt armor here, okay? Both Anchorage and Baltimore and Buffalo all have this 152 millimeter belt across her machinery spaces amidships. So that's typical. The difference is that Buffalo's down here at the turn of the bilge tapers to 27 millimeters, whereas you can see here Anchorage's remains 102 millimeters. Now, I'm not convinced this is a big deal, honestly, right? The only time I feel like this might come into play is when you've got your rudder hard over one way or the other and you're taking shells, because this particular curve of the ship would be tilted, angled over a little closer to the surface, where a plunging shell might come through for a penetration, maybe. It's a super corner case. Under normal circumstances, the angle on this part of the hull is just too steep for shells to bite in, right? If I'm just sailing along just like this and a battleship shell comes in, man, look at the angle of that, right? Look at that. You're not going to land anything, right? So, but that's really the big difference here. She still has the 76 millimeter Citadel roof. This is all the same as Buffalo. She has the 27 millimeter extremities, right? This is just like Buffalo. So if you've driven a Buffalo, played a Buffalo, you know exactly what to expect in terms of how this ship is going to tank things, how she's going to take damage. It's going to feel the same. There's this weird corner case where something might bounce on Anchorage that it wouldn't on Buffalo, but 99 times out of 100, it's not going to be a thing, okay? So, same basic overall idea. Maneuverability and concealment. Again, no real changes here. Anchorage's top speed, 33 knots, kind of about where you'd expect to find it. Handling-wise, these are all identical values. She will handle identically to Buffalo, which is unfortunately not a ringing endorsement. I'm actually a little concerned about this because driving Buffalo is not a particularly enjoyable experience, especially when you compare her to Baltimore. Baltimore, for all her little quirks, handles pretty well. Buffalo, despite having a turning circle that's only maybe about 10% higher and a rudder shift time that's only about a second slower, the overall length, that additional overall length you get because of this extra turret at the stern, means the ship handles very differently, and you notice, and you take more damage because of it. So, yeah, it's not a ringing endorsement that this thing handles like a Buffalo. She does have basically the exact same detection as a Buffalo. Full stealth rig, I think, gets you down to about 10.7-ish or so. And she has, of course, this ship doesn't get access to radar. We'll talk about that in a minute. So that's not really noteworthy. Whereas, of course, on Buffalo, you have 10-kilometer radar and 10.7 detection. Here, you just have your detection you've got to deal with. Main battery, keeping with the theme. Yep, that's right, kids. These are the exact same main battery guns as Buffalo at Tier 9. These are the same shell velocities, the same ballistics, the same shell damage, and even the same main battery range. You see there, 15.6 kilometers. The key difference here is that Buffalo's guns at Tier 9 reload nearly 30% faster. They reload in 12 seconds. You see here, Anchorage's guns reload every 15.5 seconds. The other differentiator, of course, is that Buffalo gets access to upgrade slot 6 because she's a Tier 9 ship. That means Buffalo can either boost her range via the range modification in that slot, or she can boost her rate of fire with main battery modification 3. Anchorage gets neither of these things. What you see is what you get, right? You're getting a 15.5 second reload. You're getting 15.6 range. There's pretty much nothing you can do about these numbers. Although the range, I'll get to this in a minute. There is something you can do about the range, and you can probably figure that out because she has aircraft facilities here, midships. But basically, this is the base range of the ship, and there's nothing you can do about it. Now, the nice thing, the positive note about this main battery, these are the same 203 millimeter shells fired by basically every USN heavy cruiser from Baltimore up to the top of the line. So you're getting really nice HE shells, and then of course you're getting the super heavy AP on the American piercing shells there with the 5,000 Citadel damage. Oh, that's secondary ones. Where are they at? There they are. 5,000 Citadel damage. There we go. So these aren't new. It's just repackaged a tier lower compared to Baltimore. You basically have that extra stern turret. Other than that, it's basically the same main battery. Torpedoes. What? On an American heavy cruiser? Yep, you heard that correctly. This ship comes with one torpedo launcher per side of the ship, one quad tube launcher here, kind of buried in the hull. Now, we'll go look. If you go look at Buffalo, right? Remember, this is a Buffalo hull. You'll see this exact same plate space on a Buffalo, but there's literally a plate welded over this spot. Here on Anchorage, this spot is open, and there's a quad torpedo launcher in here. The best part of this is that these are good torpedoes, too. These are the exact same Mark 16 Mod 1 torpedoes mounted by Tier 9 American destroyer USS Fletcher. These are arguably the best torpedoes in the American arsenal in all of World of Warships. So I feel like if you can work to where you can get good mileage out of these torpedoes, that's one of the keys to really playing this ship well. Because these are excellent torpedoes. We just got to figure out how to use them. Now, you see they're 10.5 kilometer range. You remember earlier I mentioned your detection is going to be about 10.7 full stealth rig. So you can't use these from stealth the way you can if you're driving, say, a Minotaur, for example. However, like Japanese cruisers, if an enemy is pushing into you, particularly if they're pushing into, and we'll talk about this in a minute, pushing into your smoke, then these torpedoes become really, really, really nice. A defenses, this is one of the places that Anchorage really kind of falls down. Definitely falls short here. She has the worst AA suite of any American heavy cruiser, period. I would argue that even Pensacola, New Orleans, and Indianapolis all have better anti-aircraft suites than Anchorage, just because they have a middle ring made up of those ubiquitous 40mm Bofors that Anchorage doesn't have. You see here she has her long-range ring, the 5-inch 38s, and then she has some smaller caliber stuff in a short-range ring. She has no mid-range aura at all. Anchorage is like the only American cruiser in this matchmaking range without any mid-range AA other than USS Atlanta, which of course banks everything on all of those 5-inch 38 turrets that she's covered in. This is compounded by the fact, and we're going to talk about her consumables now, this is compounded by the fact that she does not get access to defensive fire. So Anchorage is a ship that's going to see Tier 10 carriers in her matchmaking, but she has probably what amounts to about Tier 6, maybe Tier 7 anti-aircraft armament, if I'm being generous, okay? And she can't take defensive fire. So kind of unusually for American ships, she is definitely more vulnerable to airplanes than you might be used to. But what other consumables can she take? Well, I teased it earlier, I mentioned it earlier. There it is. That's her main gimmick. Anchorage gets access to the smoke generator consumable. And this is not pansy smoke either, like Kutuzov or Edinburgh. This is full-on Tier 8 American destroyer smoke. Same as Benson or Kidd, with a dispersion time of over 2 minutes. And you see the action time there, 30 seconds. She can lay it on a really nice smoke screen, hang out on that for a while, and then that cooldown time will eventually come back around and she can do it again. Now, she gets 2 charges here. And then, of course, with Superintendent, you can get 3. So this is, like Kutuzov, this is a limited trick that she can utilize. But also, like Kutuzov, learning kind of when to use it, when best to use it, how to utilize it, and so on, is going to be key to playing this ship. While I'm here talking about the smoke, I want to point something else out. Detection while firing main battery guns in smoke, 8 kilometers. Okay, so that's something to keep in mind. All right, I keep using Kutuzov as a comparison here. This is another place that the comparison is at because Kutuzov's detection while firing in smoke is 7.7 kilometers. This is something that I think Wargaming is eventually going to have to come back around to. Not that Kutuzov needs a buff, but I think that Kutuzov has now been, let us say, balanced enough in terms of how detectable she is in her smoke that maybe they could consider reselling her. Because here I have a ship that's going to do almost exactly the same thing. Granted, she doesn't have nearly the range of a Kutuzov. That's fair. But she's just about as detectable. In fact, these shells hit significantly harder. And here you go, right? And they're presumably going to be able to make this ship available. It'll be sold or something along these lines. Something else worth pointing out here is that it means that smoke cloud gives you a kind of a narrow window to play with, right? Your base detection, I don't have her rigged up for it, but her full stealth rig is like, 10 and change, a little over 10 and a half. And so you got that window, up to that point, they won't spot you. Then you're spotted. And then once again, if you're firing your guns after that in smoke at 8 kilometers, it doesn't matter who they are, they're going to see you in that smoke cloud. So learning how to use this smoke, making effective use of it, and not getting spotted in it, we hope, is going to be key to understanding and kind of getting the most out of the ship. The other consumable slot here is highly variable, right? I can take a catapult fighter, okay? I can take a spotting aircraft. This is the only way you can buff her main battery range, or I can take Hydroacoustic Search. All of these sound like tempting options, don't they, right? We just talked about how bad her AA is, so the fighter maybe has a little bit of appeal. Spotting aircraft, 15.6 kilometer range, nothing to write home about. This would bump that up to almost 19 kilometers, probably a little over 19. It'd be pretty nice for a short duration. Would be there about almost 2 minutes, right? Or the Hydro. If I'm going to be camped in smoke for a while, I'm going to attract torpedoes. This Hydro might be really, really attractive. So you have some tough choices here to make in this other consumable slot. So yeah, I mean, all in all, Anchorage is a Buffalo, and Buffalo is not that amazing of a ship. Okay. In fact, statistically, Buffalo is the worst Tier 9 cruiser on the NA server by both win rate and average damage in Tier 9. However, one of the main reasons for that, in my opinion, is that Buffalo is so detectable and she just eats tons and tons of damage. Anchorage is going to have both of those problems, but she's able to alleviate one of those problems if she's able to use her smoke effectively. She can't solve the other one because she doesn't have a heal. Buffalo gets a heal, Anchorage doesn't. I can't help you with the fact she eats damage. She's not going to recover any damage the way Buffalo can, but I don't know. I mean, is that going to be enough? Let's shake the 8-ball here. Yeah. Reply hazy, try again, right? We don't know yet. We're going to have to find out in testing and see what, if any, changes they decide they're going to make to this ship as she comes to super testing. Anyway, guys, there you go. First look at USS Anchorage. Hope you enjoyed that. Wash your hands, be safe out there, and I'll catch you next time.